Welcome to my birth story of my second born child, my second son, Nolan. I was exactly 38 weeks. So the day before I was 37 weeks and 6 days. And during the day I felt really big, and we ended up taking some pictures outside of my big belly, and I just felt off, but I've been feeling off for 3 or 4 days. I knew it was coming soon, and every day I kept telling my husband, today's the day, today's the day. And including that Sunday, I said, today's the day. And it wasn't that Sunday, but it was late that night. So that weekend we had done tons of cleaning around the house and gotten everything kind of in order. And it was kind of nice that I ended up going into labor on a Sunday night, I will say. It was a Friday, so the house was a complete wreck because we were going to clean it up on the weekend. Plus I was still working then. So the house was really clean and neat and orderly, and my husband had mowed the lawn and cleaned the pool, and laundry was done. We're going to bed. It's about 11 o'clock, and I had a light cramp, and I was like, I think this is it, but I don't want to say anything to him. I want him to be able to fall asleep. So he falls asleep around midnight. I was like, I think I am in labor. Like, these are like light cramps, but they seem spaced. Not like a contraction, though. So I pulled out my app, my Sprout app, and it has a section in it where you can time contractions. So I just started hitting it every time I felt like a light cramp. And sure enough, every 4 or 5 minutes I was having a light cramp. And so between midnight and 2, they started getting more and more intense. So finally at 2, I decided I should wake him up. So I woke him up and told him, and he's like, call your parents because we need them to come watch our older son, Austin. So I called my parents at 2 in the morning. Now mind you, they live 2 hours away. So they immediately get up, grab, a few clothes because they didn't have their bags packed yet because they thought it was going to be a while still. Because again, it's like, I don't know, Austin came at 39 weeks, so I guess they should have had their bags packed. I kept telling them, and I told my husband to pack his bag, and he had done it that weekend. So mine had been packed for weeks. So they get to my house at 4 in the morning. By this time, my contractions went from being like, really steady, kind of more intense between midnight and 2, like that I knew it was like serious go time, and they were 4 minutes apart, and they were very strong. And then I called my parents, and it's like all of a sudden they became really weak and 8 minutes apart. I was like, great, they're driving up here in the middle of the night, and I'm not about to have a baby. So I was feeling really bad and not sure, and just it felt a little crazy. So, but my husband had started doing like some extra loads of laundry, like towels and sheets and just random things, so we'd be completely caught up. And like, this is horrible. So my parents got here about 4:30. They're like, we're tired, we're gonna go to bed because the toddler will be up soon. I was like, yeah, okay, fine. So they went in the guest room and went to sleep, and it was like 5 in the morning. I was like, Matt, let's just lay down and go back to sleep. I can't think I can sleep. And sure enough, I fell asleep, and I'm sure I was still having contractions every 8 minutes, but they became so weak I would kind of wake up out of them and fall right back into sleep. By 6 though, they were really painful. There was no more sleeping. Yeah, by 6. So from 4:30 to 6, we kind of rested. I said, let's get in the car. So we got in the car, started heading towards the hospital. My husband's like, I'm starving. Do you mind if I go through a drive-through? I was like, I don't mind. Like, I'm not in that much pain. It's fine. So he goes through Crystals, and he gets some Crystal burgers and some coffee and smash browns. And at this point, it's getting more and more intense. I'm like, okay, get to the hospital now. Like, let's stop messing around. So he's like eating and driving, and we get to the hospital. I'm like, okay, let's film a little video, which I was trying to vlog it, but it didn't really work out because it's just so chaotic. But you can check that video out. I'll link it below. Anyway, so we're outside, we're doing a little video, and we get out of the car and we grab the bags, and I realize my bag's not there. I'm like, the baby bag is there and his bag is there. I'm like, did you grab all the bags? He's like, no, I thought you'd get your own bag. I was like, no, I was having contractions. I was sitting in the car, like, let's go. So he's like, he just didn't know. It was a mistake. So we call my dad. I didn't really want to go in without my bag, even though I didn't really need my bag. I don't know why I thought I needed my bag. So anyway, we wait for my dad to get up there. He gets up there with the bag, and then we realize, like, it's so close to shift change at 7 o'clock. We see the doctors going in and out. Let's just wait until like they're settled in their new shift. So like 7:15-ish, we walk in. I also have my journal here because I I journaled it right away, you know, so I would remember more of it. Um, anyways, so we see the shift change, we go in, you know, they say, is this your first baby? They ask a few questions, they put me in a wheelchair, and they wheel me up to like a triage area where someone comes out and checks you. And she's like, oh, you're 4 centimeters, you know, that's good. You know, we're almost full because they have 7 labor and delivery rooms. We're almost full, let's get you a room. So they give me like the second to last room, which I feel like happened last time to me too. So we get in the room, and I'm only 4 centimeters, so it's not that big of a deal. It's like 7:30, 8 o'clock, you know, we're in the room probably at 8. And my husband's like, well, I'm gonna go move the car somewhere else, like into permanent parking, because he was parked at emergency, and I'm gonna get the rest of the bags. I'm like, fine. But a lot kept happening, like nurses kept walking in, and, you know, we were talking, so he got a little sidetracked, and they were like, what are you going to do for pain management? And they were bringing in paperwork, so I wanted him there for that. So, you know, he was helping me, and I was signing the paperwork, and I was getting into the bed, and they were like, yeah, now's a good time, go move the car. So they took me from triage, and they gave me a room, and they were wheeling me in, and I asked if the same nurse was on the floor as last time, and they said no. Her name was Jill. I'm like, is Jill here? And they were like, no. And she's like, I'm gonna be your nurse, and she seemed okay, so I was like, okay, but a little annoyed maybe that I had asked, I don't know. But anyway, she was training. She was a training nurse. So she had someone with her, following her. They bring me to the room, and they're hooking me up to monitors and the machines, and they're getting me to sign some paperwork and asking me what I want to do about pain management. And I told them I want an epidural, and they're like, okay, well, he's in an emergency C-section right now. We only have one anesthesiologist, and he has to stay in the room the entire time the emergency C-section is going on. I was like, okay, that's fine. And they're like, and after that, they have a planned C-section that he's going to sit through, and then he's coming to you. At this point, I'm like, seriously? Like, that's crazy, but it can't take that long, is what I was thinking. Like, aren't C-sections fast? So I wasn't too worried about it. I'm getting all in the bed and everything, and situated in the gown, and taking my shoes off and everything. And my husband's like, I'm gonna go move the car to the emergency area and get the rest of the bags. So they had checked me, I was 4 centimeters, fine, he leaves. And I was like, ooh, I'm having really bad contractions. Can I please get that epidural? Can I move up the list? Anything, like, can you put me before the planned C-section? Like, I'm in, like, active labor and pain, like, you know what I mean? She's probably just sitting in the waiting room. And they were like, no, there's nothing we can do, and there's actually someone that's further along in labor than you, so you're going to be after the 2 C-sections, and then someone, and then you. So I was getting upset at this point. So they checked me, and they're like, oh my gosh, you're 7 centimeters. Have you had your B strep? What did it come back as? I was like, I don't know. I'm supposed to have an appointment today to find out. Like, I have no idea. So they're like, okay, let's call the midwife. So they call my midwife, and she comes over. My water wasn't broken yet, so she broke my water. They had given me an IV of fluids at this point, and they were hooking up the antibiotics, and assuming that the B strep test was negative. My midwife was like, hold on, let me call the office and find out. So the office didn't have it back yet, so she called the blood work place, or the lab check place, and they said it was negative. And that nurse, I mean, she was trying to hook those IVs up so quick. I was like, seriously? Like, hold on, you know, I don't need any more medicine than I need. So I was glad that she came back in. My midwife said, don't let her give you that, you're fine. It came back negative. So I told the nurse in training that, and she went and told the nurse, and so they didn't have to hook that up. So I still had the fluids at this point, and I'm like, I am in a lot of pain. Is there anything you can do about this? Like, this is crazy. So they're like, we can put some pain medicine in your bag. So I was like, yes, do it. And they're like, well, you have to sign some paperwork, and once the baby is born, if the baby is born within an hour of the pain medicines going in the bag, the baby has to be taken to the NICU immediately for observation for 1 full hour. I'm like, that's fine. I don't care. Give me something. At this point, my husband is back for moving the car. My husband didn't go to the, now my memory is getting fuzzy. I think he just got in the bags. He didn't even move the car. He just got in the bags. So because I was calling him about the pain medicine and the NICU thing, because I didn't know what to do. So he comes back with just the bags, and he's like, I don't want the baby to go to the NICU. Don't do this, don't do this. And I'm like, no, I need the pain medicine. Give it to me. So we had a little talk about that. We decided just go ahead with the pain medicine. I get the medicine in my bag. So we're talking, I think I remember it being 9:15 at this point. And finally get the pain medicine. I'm like, oh, this is going to be great. No, it was nothing. There was no pain relief from this stupid medicine in the bag. Did nothing for me. And then I didn't even realize it, but my needle had come out my arm, so the pain medicine and the fluids were just going all over the bed, all over me. And I was just so out of it and in so much pain I didn't notice. So I told her, and they got the needle back in, my IV back in, I guess it was my wrist, or my hand. They got it back in, and at this point, I'm like talking to the nurse. My husband's like, is it okay if I go move the car? I didn't get to move the car. So yeah, he runs down and she checked me right before he left. She's like, let me check. Okay, you're 7 centimeters. Go move the car. She goes to move the car and she leaves the room. And I remember being in so much pain and so much pressure. Like, I have to poop pressure. So I said something to the nurse in training. She's like, oh, that means you're probably ready to push. Let me go get the nurse. So she goes and grabs the nurse and she's like, oh my gosh, you need to push. I'm going to call the midwife. So the midwife is on her way and she's like, you have to start pushing your 10 centimeters. How did I go from 7 to 10 and literally my husband's not even back from moving the car yet? So I start calling my husband. I'm like, they're gonna make me push. I'm so upset. This is, this sucks. It's like not even right. It's like, and so now it's like 10 o'clock and they're making me start to push. And I was very upset, flailing my legs. Like, I couldn't take the pain. Like, where's the epidural? I still want my epidural. She's like, I took you off the epidural list. And she's like, push, you have to push, the baby's here. So the nurse in training is holding one leg, Matt's holding the other leg. He's barely squeals into the room as I'm calling him a million times. And she's like, push. And we're going with the contractions and pushing. And she's like, you're not doing a very good job. You need to calm down. And I'm like, don't tell me I'm not doing a good job and don't tell me to calm down. So then my husband starts like, you need to calm down. You need to calm down. And then she left the room because the midwife was there. And I think she was telling the midwife that I was not being calm and I was like erratic. But my midwife walks in, she's like, what's wrong? It's okay, don't worry. Like she just had empathy the second she walked in, and that calmed me down. Finally, someone being like kind. And she checked me and she's like, well, the baby's head, it really isn't that close. And I really don't think you're a full 10 centimeters. I think I'm gonna go back to work, and why don't you put her back on the epidural list? I just don't think she's mentally ready to push, and I really don't think the baby's head is engaged enough for her to be pushing right now. So that made the nurse, I think, a little angry. So anyway, she went and put me back on the list. My midwife left, and my husband went out in the hallway, just to kind of see what was going on with the nurse, because the midwife, they both walked out. And he comes back and he's like, you really need to calm down. And I'm like, so I got angry with him. And then he said, they're going to put you back on the epidural list. Don't worry. All the rooms are taken. And there's 2 other women in labor walking up and down that look like they're in active labor. Like, they don't have enough rooms. Like, I think they're trying to rush you, to get this room to someone else. And I'm like, well, I feel bad for those women, but I'm in pain and I'm in labor. I can't worry about them. They can find another room somewhere else in this whole hospital. So I was getting very frustrated. And I told my husband, I want to call my mom. I want my mom to come. And we had agreed that it would just be us in the room. So I was like, that's fine. You still can be us in the room. I just want, it to be you and me. And he would not let me hand me the phone. He wouldn't hand me the phone to call my mom. So I was getting more and more upset. And the nurse again was there and she's like, you need to calm down. And I'm like, stop telling me to calm down. Like, I've had enough of you. And I kind of told her off a little bit. And she's like, you don't even understand. You could stand up right now and the baby would fall out. She goes, that's how ready you are to have this baby. And I go, well, I want an epidural. My midwife said I'm not, only 9 to 9.5 centimeters, and to put me on the list. And she's like, you're on the list, but it's going to be a while. And she had also told me that she was going to put the medicine in my bag, but I would have a baby before an hour was up. So she thought it was pointless, and it was just going to make me send my baby to NICU. So I remember specifically looking up and it being like 10:30. So I'm like, it's been an hour and 15 minutes since you gave me the bag of medicine, right? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, good, so my baby doesn't have to go to NICU now. She's like, correct. And I'm like, okay, so already she's been proven wrong once. I'm going to go with my midwife, says the baby's head isn't far enough down and I'm only 9 centimeters and I have time to labor and I have time for an epidural. So at that point, I was just ignoring her. And she just kept telling me, you need to calm down. I'm like, I can't calm down because in between contractions, I'm fighting with my husband to hand me the phone so I can call my mom. And she's like, you can call your mom, but your mom is not going to make it here, you know, from wherever you live. You're going to have this baby so soon. You don't even know how soon you're going to have this baby. And I'm like, I know I'm not having the baby soon. My midwife wouldn't have just left. Like, please, just give me my phone. So my husband got mad at me, and he took his chair and moved away from me and was staring out the window like this, just being a stubborn jerk off. And then I was already mad at the nurse. So at this point, I'm crying because I feel completely and totally alone. I have no support. And I remember my butt had scooted towards the end of the bed because they had it like really short, you know, like I was still pushing or something. They didn't have the legs of the bed up. So I was very upset. And she's like, push yourself back into the bed. You're going to fall off the bed. And I'm like, okay. So I'm like trying to push myself up by myself. She's being nasty, not helpful. My husband's staring out the window. At this point, I'm just so exhausted and tired, and I had started like with mild contractions at midnight. You know, we're now at 10 hours into labor, and I'm just miserable. Finally, my husband's like, fine, I'll give you the phone. You're being ridiculous. And I'm like, you're being ridiculous. So he gives me the phone. I call my mom, and she's like, I'm on my way. And I very calmly just said, Mom, I need you to get in the car and come to the hospital. Leave, you know, Austin, my toddler, with my dad, with Grandpa. She's like, okay, I'm on my way. So she didn't know what had happened. She thought maybe I had a stillbirth. She didn't know if something was wrong. So she's immediately starts calling my husband's phone, not realizing like he's right next to me. And my husband's like, no, everything is fine. Just get up here. Your daughter's being irrational. Like, my mom's like, irrational? She's giving birth. You know, if there's ever some time you give somebody slack, it's now. So my mom gets in the room, and they're like, oh, the epidural's here. So it took her about 20 minutes to get there. So they made her and my husband leave right away. So she barely got to see me, like, for 2 seconds. She didn't even come in the door, I don't think. And the guy's there for the epidural, and I'm like, the nurse says there's no time and it's not going to work, and then I should have already, you know, had this baby. And he's like, the nurses always say that. Ignore her. This epidural will have time to work. We did the paperwork so fast. I leaned over the bed, and the nurse is like, she can't be still. She's flailing around, and she's, you know, very upset and crying. I don't think she's going to be able to be still. And I'm like, watch me be still. So I just started praying, and I'm on the edge of the bed, and I'm just trying to be still because I knew, like, I can't move. I have to be calm. And plus I want to prove this nurse wrong because I really hate her at this point. If ever I wanted to punch someone in the face, it was her. So I'm leaning over, and he does that epidural so fast. I would say within 20 minutes from the time he walked in to the time he left the room. And I was like, how long until it kicks in? He goes, 10 minutes. And your contractions will be gone. I don't know if it's going to have enough time to fully work all the way down to your vagina, but it should take care of your contractions and some of the birth pain. But you know, mentally now you know you have it, you'll be good. And so he was really nice, and he left the room. The nurse and the other 2 nurses are there, the one in training, and she was the one who held on to me the whole time, let me hold on to her while I was getting the epidural in my back. And the other nurse, I just had no use for her. I don't even know where she was. So my husband comes back in, and my mom comes in, and my mom starts like, are you okay? And I'm like, I just started telling her the whole story, how I hated the nurse. I was very unhappy. My mom started doing like pressure points for pain and rubbing my feet, and she helped me get back into the bed like in a comfortable position. And my husband was on the other side, just kind of like sitting there, and my mom was like rubbing my shoulders and rubbing my hands and rubbing my feet. And I'd say that went on for about 30 minutes. So we're probably looking at a little after 11 now. And I'm like, oh, I feel a lot of pressure again. You know, so I would say I had the epidural in over the 10-minute, you know, okay, sorry, my memory card died. Like, I'm just feeling a lot of pressure, and I think it's time to start pushing. So I tell my mom, and she goes out and gets the nurse, and the nurse comes in, and she pushes the curtain back, and she looks at me, and she goes, you are driving me crazy. And I'm just like, you are horrible, is what I'm thinking in my head at this point. And for the hour that my mom was there during this time of the epidural taking effect, every time she would come in, she'd be really nice. In front of my mom, she was super nice. And I'm just like, and that was the first time she was kind of rude in front of my mom. And I think my mom had called her number anyway, so my mom looked at me, and because she knew I wasn't happy with the nurse. And she's just like, it's gonna be okay, I'm gonna go in the waiting room. So my mom left to go to the waiting room, and the nurse checks me, and she's like, yeah, you're 10 centimeters, it's time to push. And I'm like, are you gonna call my midwife? Because I didn't want her to try to deliver me or something shady, because I just did not like her. She's like, yes, I'm gonna call your midwife. So she leaves, and I guess she sent in her little shadow, the nurse in training girl, and she started hooking. I mean, I think she's a real nurse. She was just training to be on labor and delivery. I think she had been in like a different department before, so this was still all kind of new to her. So anyway, she starts, doing stuff, moving stuff in the room, moving a table over, putting lights up, the stirrups up, getting me kind of in position. She's on one leg, my husband's on the other, and then nurse bitch is at the end of the table, and she's helping me push and telling me when to start pushing, and if I feel like I need to push, I should push. And at this point, I want to say it's like 11:30ish. And my midwife walks in. We've been pushing for a little while, but not long. As my midwife's office is like literally 3 minutes away. It's like almost right next door. It'd almost be faster to walk than to drive. So my midwife comes in, and she starts like scrubbing up and getting, her scrubs and everything on that she's supposed to wear. And I did a few pushes while she did that. And then I noticed that 2 more nurses come in, and they were by the station where they always take the baby to under the light. So I was like, okay, they're thinking this is going to be fast, I remember. And that was one of the few times I'd opened my eyes. With my first son, I don't even think I opened the eyes, so I didn't realize there was other people in the room. So at this point, the nurse in training kind of backs up, and we have the nurse that I don't like, and my husband, and my midwife, and then the nurse in training girl over there by the watching the contractions go. And I don't even remember. I remember the nurse in training girl because I liked her. Her name was Brittany, but I don't remember the main nurse's name. I think it was like on purpose. Like I purposely kind of ignored her. And they were like, it's time to have a baby. The baby's head is right here. And I was just focusing on my midwife because I really like her. I was so glad she was on call when I went into labor, and I knew that weekend she wasn't supposed to be on call, but it was Monday morning now. I guess she probably had relieved Dr. Hunt and was on call. So she was coaching me and being good, and I kept saying, I remember, I can't do this, I can't do this. I think I was just so worn down and felt not supported that I just felt in my head that I couldn't do it. And with my first son, I pushed for like 2 hours, hour and a half, something like that. And I was anticipating it to be like that. So I was just like, oh, here we go. This is going to be so hard. And I wasn't thinking about the reward of the baby. I'm just thinking how hard it is on your body. And it's hard and it hurts. And the epidural isn't in full effect. And I'm feeling a lot of pain and a lot of pressure. But I'm sure it's not nearly as bad as a full-on natural birth. But way more than I felt with my first son. Way more. With my first son, I couldn't even feel my legs. I definitely felt my legs. I could move my legs a little bit. Like they weren't totally numb. They didn't even hardly have to move me in the bed. That's how little time I had the epidural. Because usually they're supposed to move you from side to side to help the baby not get, like, I guess, their blood pressure and their heart rate to keep it, I guess, steady. So they didn't even really move me from side to side in the bed. And so I'm pushing at this point, and my midwife is down there, and she's like, you can do it, you can do it, you can do it. And I was like, I can't do it. And so they were all trying to cheer me on. And this probably went on for like 20 minutes. And then she must have cut me. And we didn't even discuss it. At least with my first son, she said, I have to cut you. I was like, no. And we talked about it for about 30 seconds. And then she's like, no, I have to. And she did. This time she didn't even say anything about it. All I know is I opened my eyes, and the 2 nurses that were just chit-chatting quietly kind of by the, like I said, where the baby goes under the lights when he's first born, they both come running over. And my husband, I just see him get shoved to the side. And I think that's when the cut happened. And they both pull my legs back, and they're like, push. And I pushed, and I guess out he came. No one even told me, like, his head is close, you're doing good, the shoulders are here. Like, I don't know, I just did not feel that encouraging this time compared to my first nurse that I had with my midwife. They made like such a good team. That's why I wanted that nurse again. Instead, I got the worst nurse probably. And last time I had the best nurse. So it just makes a huge difference in your labor and just everything. It was just really rough. So the baby's born, he's put on my chest. I looked to make sure there's a penis. It's definitely a boy, and 10 fingers and 10 toes, and he was on my chest for a really long time. He was crying. They were cleaning out his nose and mouth, rubbing him. He was probably on my chest for like 5 minutes. They took him over, they weighed him height, did a few things under the light. I think they were just checking his breathing, whatever, and they brought him back to me. And they're like, you have an hour or so with him, try to nurse. We'll be back to give him a bath. But the hospital was so busy. Next thing I know, it's been like 4 hours. We're still in this room. My epidural's completely worn off. Like, I'm up, I'm going to the bathroom. I don't even remember a catheter going in me. But again, I didn't have my epidural in for that long. So finally they come in to give the baby a bath. And they're like, sorry, we're super behind. I'm like, yeah, you know, I can imagine. My husband told me there was women walking the corridors because there was not enough rooms, and that the anesthesiologist was so behind. And she told me that for the first time in 2 years, they had to call in the second anesthesiologist. I'm like, I wish you would have done that a lot sooner. Like, they obviously did that after I had my epidural, but like, just because it hasn't happened in 2 years doesn't mean you don't see yourself getting backed up and that you need to call the second anesthesiologist in, because I just think it caused a lot of chaos and havoc there. I think people might have even had their baby sooner. Like, I probably would have if I had had a sooner, you know, epidural sooner. I think I was able to push earlier. Looking back on it, I'm sure I probably was, but I just mentally was not prepared to have a natural birth. So therefore, I was like going to do anything in my power not to push or cooperate because I wanted an epidural. And plus, I did not like the nurse anyway. And my midwife said she didn't think I was fully ready, and it would have been. And at my 2 or 6 week appointment, my midwife told me the baby's head was so far up. She said it would have been a long of pushing for you. It would have been a long time pushing. So I'm glad that it was only like 25 minutes of pushing. He was born at 11:54 a.m. So basically, it started at midnight, and he was almost born at noon the next day. A little faster than my other labor, which was 15 hours, but that labor progressed very slowly. It'd be like, you're 4 no, I came into the hospital at 7 centimeters. But then they was like, oh, you're still 7, okay, you're 7.5, you're 8. You know, it was real slow. Once I got to the hospital, which I knew it was going to be with the first, so that's why I waited so long to get there. Yeah, with my labor going from, 4 minutes apart for the contractions to 8 minutes apart, it was confusing. So when I got to the hospital, it's only be 4 centimeters. I guess I was a little surprised for a second time mom, considering last time I'd made it till 7 centimeters till I got to the hospital. But it was so much more intense this time, even though they were 8 minutes apart. If I would have waited for them to go back to 4 minutes apart, there's no doubt I would have had a baby at home, because I don't think they ever got to 4 minutes until I was like actively pushing. It was really strange. Maybe during the epidural they were. I don't remember timing them because I didn't really feel much. But they were definitely closer together, I'm sure, at that point. But they never were as close together as they were with my first son. Even when I was pushing, they weren't as close together. So it was definitely very different that way, which is good because it's less pain, but less frequency of pain, but the pain was more intense during the contraction. So that was odd. I'm filming outside because I have a split level house and I've got a toddler sleeping on that side and the baby sleeping on that side, so I don't want to wake anyone up. But yeah, after 4 hours they came in, they gave the baby a bath, and they put me in a wheelchair and they wheeled me over to a recovery room. And that is a whole separate story on those nurses. Some are good and some are bad. But I definitely have had a slower recovery this time, and I think it has a lot to do with everything that happened in the hospital. Also in the hospital, I was getting my stitches before the midwife left. Last thing she did was she stitched me up, and she said I had a small tear. She never uses degrees. She never says anything about degrees of tears, but she just said a small tear, and well, it wasn't even a tear, it was a cut. She cut me, a small cut, and as she was stitching me up, I completely felt it, and I told her to stop. It really hurt. So they gave me a shot of, I think it's called lidocaine. If not, it's basically a pain medicine. It's a liquid pain medicine that goes through a needle. And they gave that to me, and she continued to stitch me. And then after that, she left, and that's when the bath and everything. We had 4 hours to ourselves to try to nurse and just hang out in the room. And they told me I could eat at that point. I think they brought me some food, and I ate a little bit of it, but I wasn't that hungry. But that is my birth story. But it was, it was a harder birth than my first, for sure, more painful, and the recovery has been much tougher, even though he was a pound smaller. He was 7 pounds, 5 ounces, and he was born exactly at 38 weeks, and he was born at 11:54 a.m. after 12 hours of labor. But we're just so happy and so blessed to have this cute little guy in our life, and he is exactly 2 months old now. But I will see you guys next time. Bye.